So I finally managed to watch Dragon Ball Super Broly on the 21st of January, a few days after its theatrical release in the United States, and boy, everything leading up to the film's release didn't disappoint on the hype that it gathered. In today's video, I will be giving my spoiler-free review on the film, so if you want to hear me talk about events from the movie in more depth, check out my spoiler talk video, as this video is simply to get my first impressions and thoughts on the basics of the film out for those who wish to not get spoiled. Getting right into it, this film was definitely groundbreaking, not just for me, but for the entire world. Setting box office records for anime films across the globe within its opening day, the overall anticipation for Dragon Ball's 20th film over the past several months have allowed it to become as successful as it's been thus far, and in my personal opinion, it's one of the better Dragon Ball films out there. Every single aspect from the animation to the voice cast to the overall tone of the film is such a delight to take in, and this film benefits from the freshness of its storytelling and reliance on previous Dragon Ball knowledge, making it one of my favorite Dragon Ball movies due to how many references there were back to the source material. Now, while the majority of the film relied on the audience knowing Dragon Ball's history up until the present day, it didn't shy away from taking a few moments to explain significant pieces of Dragon Ball's history and display what has happened in the past in order to fill newcomers in on the story. Spoilers for this movie are pretty rough to talk about, since even some of the promotional items for this film gave away major plot points, so it's quite tough to talk about this movie without going into spoiler territory, but I'll do my best for those who have stayed strong avoiding spoilers up until this point. It's safe to point out that this film incorporates ideas from all three of the films that were remastered in theaters over the past couple of months, these films being Fusion Reborn, the original Broly the Legendary Super Saiyan film, and the highly beloved special, Bardock the Father of Goku. But not only does this film take inspirations from those stories, this film does a great job at separating itself from the rest of Dragon Ball's films by taking a new angle towards its story. Usually whenever a new Dragon Ball film is created, it focuses on Goku and his friends taking down a new enemy or a returning enemy, with pieces of backstory sprinkled around to further establish the overall world of Dragon Ball. With the release of Battle of Gods and Fukkatsu no F, or Revival of F if you prefer to call it that, the theatrical releases of both of those films tested the storytelling capabilities of Dragon Ball, and the two films even revived the franchise as a whole, but in the end the story still heavily revolved around Goku and his friends being impacted by the antagonists of those two films. Dragon Ball Super Broly, on the other hand, took a risk that I personally believe paid off. Rather than completely focusing on Goku and his friends, a large chunk of this movie takes the time to set Broly up as a character, and even focuses on him more than Goku and Vegeta. There was still plenty of relevance for Goku and Vegeta, but the story this time around really is meant to highlight who Broly is, and how this canonized version of the character impacts the overall story. There's a reason this movie is called Dragon Ball Super Broly, and that's because this is Broly's movie. As much as I like the original Broly, I never found his character too compelling, and the major emotion I felt towards him was fear, particularly when I was a kid fighting him in the old Dragon Ball games. You can't deny that it wasn't scary when he rushed towards you in Budokai Tenkaichi. I know some of you guys were scared of him too. But once I outgrew the fear of Broly's intimidating demeanor, his character kinda just took a backseat to more compelling and visually appealing movie villains. With this version of Broly, however, I can say with 100% certainty that I actually want to see more of him. He was such an interesting character, and his story this time around was much more logical than his previous counterparts. Having Broly's backstory tie into Vegeta and having Paragus and his son go after the prince for vengeance was a major driving force of this film, and I appreciate that Vegeta had a much more prominent role than what he had in the previous Broly films. Goku this time around didn't really have a lot to do with Broly's character, and he was simply there just because he's the protagonist and he needed to fight evenly with Broly for a bit. But I believe that this film did something much more interesting with the relationship between Goku and Broly than any other movie. In the previous Broly movies, Broly simply hated Goku and that was that. But this time around, Broly's backstory is sort of reimagined into something very similar to that of Goku's. We see Broly as a very naive character who still retains his Saiyan heritage thanks to the influence of his father Paragus, but the complexity of Broly's character really shows when compared to his father's thirst for vengeance, and how the two conflict in the eyes of Chilai and Lemmo. Because of his naivety and connection to the planet that he grew up on, Broly is sort of a mirrored version of Goku, with the two even sharing similar personality traits, and thankfully we get to learn more about Broly's relationship with Paragus throughout the entire movie. The two have a very important dynamic that outshines the relationship between Broly and Paragus in the original Broly movie. Now, I think the idea of having Broly's backstory tie into Vegeta and having his upbringing be similar to that of Goku's perfectly allows the three Saiyans to revolve around one another seamlessly, and personally, I want to see more of this version of Broly in some shape or form due to how complex his relationships can be with the main cast. Not only is Broly a very intriguing character, but the overall animation and seamless flow of this movie is something to give it heavy praise for. I can't praise Naohiro Shintani enough for his clean designs of the characters, but to see it come to life on the big screen is truly a spectacle. The overall atmosphere of this film is something special because of how much range the designs give us. One moment the designs of the characters combined with the dialogue can be comical, but in the next moment it could be dramatic. You could cut the tension with a knife. Shintani even has a good way of incorporating drama into a comical scene by zooming in on a character's face and by sharpening their expressions. Shintani's drastic range from comical to dramatic is something that gives this film life in terms of visuals, and honestly, the style that he incorporates into this film is the epitome of Dragon Ball to its core. Not once throughout the entire film did I feel bored when characters stood around and talked, nor did I feel lost from the rapid bouncing around from the fighting, because everything was clearly and cleanly displayed on screen. Speaking of which, I was never really taken out of the experience by the voice acting either. The entire cast brought their A-game to this film, and I thought everything sounded great in terms of voice and music. The only voice complaint that I might have is that one character had a very heavy accent towards the beginning of the film that sort of stuck out from the rest of the voices, but I found it more humorous than irritating. Despite the dialogue being very great, I do however think that the music was a bit overpowering at some points, even draining out some character voices. However, this was more noticeable towards the beginning of the film, where dialogue was much more important than the action. Now that I mentioned how visually stunning the designs for this movie were, let me talk for a moment about the fighting. Good lord, the fighting in this film was incredibly choreographed, and you could feel the weight of each punch. I'm glad that a large chunk of this film was dedicated towards the story of Goku, Vegeta, and Broly, but the last half of this entire film is just one big action set piece. We get to see fight after fight between the three Saiyans, and Frieza even gets caught up in the mix at one point. There's just so much going on that you constantly need to be paying attention, or else you'll miss something, but you never get lost despite the overall speed of each character and the flashing lights of their ki. Aside from that, there's not much else I can talk about that doesn't dive deep into spoiler territory, so I'm probably going to cut the video off here and transition over into my spoiler talk video so that I can really dive deep into this movie and break it down for all of you. In conclusion, I really thought the character of Broly was expanded upon, and the complexity of his personality resonated with me on a much more positive manner than his non-canon counterpart. The entire idea of Paragus and Broly setting their sights towards Vegeta in an act of vengeance rather than have Goku be the main focus for Broly's wrath was something that I've been waiting for years to see, and I'm glad that this film finally highlighted that link between the two Saiyans. The overall animation style and atmosphere for the film were visually stunning, and I can't deny how beautiful this film is in terms of its design, its constantly flowing movements, and the near-perfect audio. I've been bouncing around between scores for this film, but I'm finally going to give it an 8.9 out of 10. I think this is not just an excellent Dragon Ball film, but a fantastic movie in general. The story is very straightforward, and despite its reliance on Dragon Ball knowledge, it does a great job at quickly filling newcomers in up until that point. My only complaints with the film are some story changes and retcons that I'll talk about in the spoiler talk video, and I think a few scenes were rushed because there was so much going on in this film at once. I would have preferred a much longer runtime to fix these issues, and I would have just wanted to see more of this movie, but I understand why this film needed to rush some things in order to leave more room for Broly's development as a character and the incredible fight scenes that came out of his development. Anyways everyone, that was my spoiler-free review on Dragon Ball Super Broly. What did you guys think of this movie, and if you haven't seen it yet, what are you waiting for? Go see it and come back here so we can talk about it. This is definitely my favorite Dragon Ball film thus far, and I'm very excited to talk about it in depth with you guys in the spoiler talk video, so let's not waste any time and hop on over to my spoiler talk. Thank you all so very much for watching this video, and if you're interested in my Dragon Ball content, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more, as it would mean a lot to get your support. I'll see you guys in the spoiler talk video.